Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, come kick it with us already. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. I'm your host, Dino De Cespedes, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What is up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic. That was a lot of football in the span of roughly 30 hours. We both have day jobs. We consumed as much as we could. And it was, I think everything we consumed was mostly glorious.
I would say so, man. I think even the ones that were a little bit less in contest, still juicy, still interesting storylines to watch. And yeah, you called it, man. I think 11 matches and just a shade over 24 hours. That's a tough haul for your boys, even if we split the docket 50-50. You know, we're just out here doing our best. So this is actually going to be a two-parter. We don't do a lot of two-parters.
Nice.
But we figured we're going to break up next Wednesday's action. Slavia Praha, Galatasaray, Vålerenga and Anderlecht, Wolfsburg, Fiorentina, Benfica, Hammarby. And then we're going to hit you with a part two. That'll include our Arsenal talk, our City talk, PSG, Juventus, and the rest of that Thursday slate. So with that said, Mr. Grant Engel, where do you want to get started?
I'm going to get started with this frosty beverage. Imagine, I knew you would.
I'm just going to hop on board.
Excellent. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
I think we should start with Benfica versus Hammarby, 1 p.m. Eastern on that Wednesday, September 27th, we want to call it? 25th. Wednesday, September 25th.
Nailed it.
I know how dates work. Let's start there. What did you see in the first tie that has you excited for the second match?
I mean, well, you already know I'm going to start with Benfica.
Have to.
That's my squad. I thought the confidence was there from them. I thought the composure was there from them. I thought physically, we made some jokes last season about, do they need to get in the weight room? They looked a little slight. I don't want to say they packed on the muscle necessarily, but I think they looked physically more, they just looked like a more mature team. And then I think speed-wise, quickness-wise, it's almost like those speed agility drills, they looked a little faster.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it's just where we are in the season or, if they've actually been putting in that work, but I was really excited to see how they looked. Even post-Kika, I thought they looked really good.
100%. They looked ready to go. They were in a hostile environment. I'll take a little bit of the Hammarby side on this. Hammarby famously have rowdy supporters over there in Stockholm. They were there. They unfurled a beautiful tifo before the match, had a big airplane on it.
Oh, yeah.
And pardon my terrible Swedish attempt, no lyfter vi mot Europa, which if Google Translate is not failing me says, now we take off toward Europe.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, just the vibes were just fantastic in there. They were scream singing at the beginning of the match, very cool. But I'm totally with you, man. I'm glad to hear you kind of confirm it. Benfica just looked stronger, physically stronger than what we saw them last year. And, we talked about the physical nature. When you go up against Nordic teams with Swedes and Norwegians on them, you're going to have to play a physical style, and Benfica was up for it.
Yeah, I think it's partly that Benfica has had to play a scrappier style just from their run through last year's Champions League tournament.
Yep.
And it seems like they did some growing up physically.
Yeah.
And now in this type of matchup, I mean, this is going to be something that I think gets woven through various parts of today's conversation. I really do think the experience matters, man, in this Champions League. Yeah. I think we saw it today, whether it's a Slavia Praha coming back, BK Hacken, unfortunately, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
The experience factor didn't quite hit on your Perry FC Manchester City match. We'll talk about that one later as well. But sticking here, Benfica looked like some of those group stage matches last year when they would come out for the second half, ready with a couple wrinkles, some new stuff, some excitement, some enthusiasm, and then they were going to play you tough all the way down the stretch in the second half. That's how they played the entire 90 minutes in this one against Hammarby.
100%. And we talked about it when we were on the Shades of Blue. Again, watch that podcast. So, the crowd was very much in it at the beginning, like I mentioned, and then 23-year-old Norwegian winger Julie Blakstad hits a laser off her left foot after her fellow Norwegian Katinka Thunberg won a header that fell perfectly into Blakstad's path. Hammarby starts it. They open the scoring 1-0. The crowd's going bonkers. That's a gut punch to a Benfica side. And they still hung so tough. And I think you're exactly right. It's got to be partially that recent Champions League experience.
Absolutely. And I think a player that we've called out a couple times, Cristina Martin Prieto, she squeezes one past to kind of knot the game up. And then I think you actually saw Benfica get a little bit more confident, a little bit more comfortable in the game.
Yep.
Because now you've withstood that early goal. You've withstood that raucous environment. Hammarby was tough, though.
Yeah.
All the way throughout. I think I've got in my notes, I don't think we've heard the last from this Hammarby team, even though this tie heads back to Portugal.
They're definitely facing an uphill battle. Headed to Lisbon, down 1 goal on aggregate. They're going to need to muster a hell of a lot more shots. But I mean, if you think about it from their perspective, if the defense can hold up, if you win regulation 1-0, you can get this thing to extra time and kind of see what happens. I think this is the match on Wednesday. There's probably not much doubt on that. Well, I don't know. We'll talk about some of the other fixtures that are going to happen on Wednesday. But I think if we're talking about teams with pedigree like Hammarby and the Damallsvenskan and obviously Benfica, they're building that pedigree. I think this is probably the match on Wednesday I'm most excited to watch.
Yeah, I think it's at least in the top 2 for me Wednesday. I've got my eye on another one. We're going to get to it in a second here. So yeah, man, you talked about it. Tough environment, tough matchup, very physical. A lot of chippiness out there. I'm not sure if these two teams are natural rivals, but maybe there's a little bit something brewing here. Obviously, Benfica, they get the difference maker. What did you see there?
Talk about difference makers. Canadian, Mary Aladou. What a pass through a lot of traffic.
Let's go.
The Canadian sends it through traffic. The ice road truckers, there's moose on the trail. I mean, that pass is absolutely brilliant. And then Andrea Norton, really cheeky to kind of like get her foot under it and just chip it over the keeper. I thought that was super awesome. I think Aladou, she was getting love on Woso Twitter. Now, obviously, we follow a lot of Canucks with our relationship with Mariam Karabi up there. She scores bangers. Follow that podcast immediately. But what a ball from Aladou.
She was a star last Champions League as well. And I think shame on us, kind of like, we mentioned quite a bit the Kika Nazareth, Jessica Silva departures. True. Not a lot of talk about Mimi Aladou and like just what she was able to do last year. I think she led Benfica in goals last Champions League. Yeah, real player. Great to see her stepping up in a huge moment. But I do want to scoot ahead. Another one of the big dogs, maybe one of the looming giants, taking on a team that I think we were both kind of looking at a little bit as a potential dark horse. Wolfsburg, Fiorentina. They lock up next Wednesday, 2 p.m. This one got ugly.
With all due respect, they have to play the game. It's never over till it's over. But let me just say, arrivederci, Fiorentina. This one's over. They got fucking smacked by Wolfsburg pretty much from Jump Street. You asked me last episode, who did I see as a potential dark horse? I said, maybe they could get past Wolfsburg and make some noise in the group stage. Wolfsburg made me feel very foolish for that take right away. Their veteran center back, Marina Hegering, she starts the bidding in the 6th minute with like this just very strange angle, diving, glancing header off a corner kick in the 6th minute. And then she adds another header for a goal in the 24th minute, which I will say maybe a wee bit of a push off on the defender before she got to the header and the one in the 24th. But at that point, it's 2-0. We're within 25 minutes. And then when it got to the 30-minute mark, I was just like, this one might get real ugly. And I thought real ugly might be 4-0. Didn't expect 7-0.
Yep, this one got away from Fiorentina. And I know you picked them as a potential dark horse. But I did mention that we had our eye on them. I wasn't going to leave you out in the cold like that.
Appreciate it.
I was open to it. I think that Wolfsburg attack. Well, first off, Hegering. I mean, the weird angle is such a great call on that first header, and somehow also perfectly executed.
Unbelievable.
One of their defenders is just like, what? Okay, that's going to go in. We already know what kind of day it's going to be. But I was really excited about that Wolfsburg left side.
Oof.
Where you got Lynette Bernstein kind of like roaming around the middle, Alex Pop out there, Eula Brand out there, and it was just felt like a tidal wave. Yeah. Of offensive firepower and offensive skill that Fiorentina just had nothing for. And then you obviously get the two. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Right.
You're defending these incredible offensive players. Marina Hegering, a defender who we watched very closely, I think in this last Olympics, where Hegering, let's say, wasn't playing quite at the level that we saw her playing at this week.
Tougher time.
Had her struggles, but once you see those go in, and you've got a defender notching a brace in less than a third of the match. That was only really one way it was going to go from there. And then Wolfsburg got their big guns warmed up.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned it. Bierenstein, Pop, and Brand, they were a nightmare for Fiorentina's defense. And I get the feeling that Okay, I'll raise my hand. Perhaps I overvalued Fiorentina from watching some past highlights and then getting excited from these two qualifier matches. They couldn't do anything. Wolfsburg was destroying them on set pieces. They were destroying them on crosses into the box. Eula Braun's goal is just off a cross. She's able to bring it down with way too much space and just drill a missile into the side of the net. But then you see Pop and Bierenstein floating around there. It's like one of those three is going to have some space almost at any given time, and you might be drawing dead on any of those plays.
Absolutely. Glad you reminded me of this because this one ended 7-0. We talked about the Hegering 2 goals.
Yeah.
Alex Pop adds a hat trick on top of that. Eula Braun, who you mentioned, she scores in the 44th. And Peter Weiss' favorite, Vivian Endemann, 83rd minute goal to make it a touchdown with the extra point. This stat, I think, has been, one of the show MVPs, I'll say. It's basically, what's the shot on target rate? So of Wolfsburg's 16 shots, how about 13 on target?
Come on, man. What are you going to do? As a goalkeeper, what do you do?
You're not going to save 13 shots.
No. I mean, not 13 good shots from great players like that.
From Wolfsburg, yeah. So yeah, this one got out of hand for sure. I think I'm ready to dust off a take, my man. So let me know if you're ready for this.
Let's go.
I might be ready to pencil in Wolfsburg into the knockout stage.
I love it.
I don't think there's any way I know it's been one explosive match, and they obviously had that little slip up in Frauen Bundesliga, but I don't see with this squad, this roster, them playing like that. I don't see this team not surviving the group stage. I mean, like they just seem loosely on the level of those other top 4 teams that we have yet to see in this qualifying phase of the Champions League.
I cannot wait to see whose group they fall into. Are they going to play Chelsea? Are they going to play Barcelona as two rematches of the final from 2 years ago? I'm totally with you. It looks like, I mean, they look great. And, I started to say earlier, maybe I overvalued Fiorentina a little bit. I think I completely underestimated the potential Wolfsburg revenge tour. Because it seems like it. And now they add the nuclear weapon, Lineth Bierenstein. And it's just like, holy crap, they look completely overwhelming. Now, we got to do the calculus. Did I think too highly of Fiorentina? Did I not think enough of Wolfsburg? Was it a combination of both? And that leads to 7-0. I got to tell you, in football, not a lot of things lead to 7-0. So I'm skewing a little more toward, I think Wolfsburg might be incredibly dangerous. I love your already penciling them out of the group stage take. I just can't wait to see who they draw.
How about that third and fourth group stage match where they go back to back? They start to develop some of that bad blood. Let's get a Wolfsburg Barcelona back-to-back match 3, match 4 in Group A. I mean, that would be just sick.
I love it. That's what I'll be rooting for. Barcelona, Wolfsburg, back-to-back. I think that would be, it's must-watch television.
Let's go. All right, let's keep it moving. Wolfsburg, Fiorentina. That's happening 2 p.m. Eastern. The game right before that, noon Eastern, Slavia Praha will be hosting Galatasaray. I watched most of this one, I'll say.
Oh, okay.
And, buddy, this one was wild. The environment was nuts. I watched it with the Turkish announcer. Definitely the Mike Watts of the Turkish women's football announcing was doing his thing today. The one moment that I don't think I'm ever going to forget. At this point in the match, it's the 48th minute, so it's tense. 0-0. Slavia Praha is probably looking a little better. And these 3 teenage boys kind of are looking nervous in the crowd. And then one of them, probably like a 14, 15-year-old kid, takes a giant drag of a cigarette.
Yes, let's go.
In the stands.
Yes.
I was like, I got to rewind this and watch it. Turkey, man. They're out there doing their own thing.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, really great moment. Great bellwether for this Galatasaray side because Andrea Stashkova scored maybe 7 minutes later. The breakaway was incredible. 2 perfectly placed passes. One over the top to switch the field right to left. The other one to bring it back the other way, puts it right into the path of Stashkova, and she breaks the game wide open. And then from there, it was basically back and forth. I mean, Praha looked like the better team. And that was one of those things where it's like, this team looks crisper. They look more technical. They look a little sharper. But Galatasaray, I think like they have a little bit of the like the Roma from last year, a little bit of the Braun from last year. Like they play physical. They take chances. This was a great match. Anybody listening that missed this one, go back and watch the second half because it was absolute fireworks. And then, of course, the experienced side, Slavia Praha, ties the game in the 98th minute at the absolute death.
Well, I appreciate the update. Full disclosure, your boy was all over the place at this time of the day. I did watch the Turkish version of the highlights to see that equalizer at the end. Turkish announcer, complete no-sell on the equalizer. Whatever Turkish is for, goal, Slavia Praha. That was pretty much his reaction at the end. And then, they blow the whistle as the equalizer hits. So I appreciate the heads up. I will be going back to watch the second half. So after Galatasaray goes up, was that when it started to just be back and forth like that? Because that's what I could kind of see from the highlights. Or was it pretty open for most of the match?
For most of the match, it was, I would say, Praha being the better team, getting the ball slightly into better spots. Galatasaray was tough, though. They were definitely looking to break. That's kind of where they wanted to get their bread and butter. And then they made a big sub. They brought on Hapsatu Diallo, who was involved, I think, in the second Stashkova goal.
Okay.
And that was just basically Diallo making a run up the right side, just roasting whoever's trying to run with her. Beautiful cross back, right into the danger area. Stashkova knocks in the second one. I mean, the whole place is going bananas. The announcer's going crazy. And then credit to Praha, didn't miss a beat, didn't blink twice, just kind of stuck with it, played their game. They got an own goal a little bit later that they definitely had a hand in producing. And then they got the super late equalizer.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited. I'm very excited. So I can see why when I said, Hammarby, Benfica, I was mostly looking forward to that. I'm doing so with only 50% information because I didn't watch nearly enough of this match between Praha and Galatasaray. So I take it this is the other match you're very, very excited to see?
Bingo. This is the one. All right. Let's jump to Wednesday's last match. So Vålerenga, Anderlecht, they lock up Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Vålerenga jumped out big time on Anderlecht today, went up 2-0, drew themselves a red card. Anderlecht pulled one back. That one ended 2-1. From what I watched of this one, Vålerenga looked better. Now this tie goes back to Oslo with Anderlecht down a goal. I think that'd be really, really tough for them to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going home to Oslo, gotta feel good. In top Syrian this season, 10 wins, 0 draws, 1 loss, 30 points in the league. sitting top of the table, gotta be feeling pretty good. Tough road to hoe for Anderlecht, I would say.
Yeah, I think Vålerenga looked like the better team. Physically, they're maybe a little bit the stronger team as well. This one, I mean, obviously not the same goal differential as Wolfsburg, Fiorentina, but this one also maybe kind of feels like a wrap, but maybe those are famous last words. We're going to be back in about a week once we know the 12 that survived, and then ipso facto, we'll have our 16. So that's going to be exciting. We can sort of start to maybe have set up some fantasy matchups. We already have one, I think, Barca Wolfsburg. We've got loosely penciled in as something that we were dying to see. All in all, though, it's going to be a really good day of football next Wednesday. We're about a week away from getting our first 4 or our next 4 into this year's group stage.
Hell yeah. And I will say, next week's matches coincidentally overlap with pre-planned time off that I had. It was tough for me to watch some of these. Had to watch a decent amount of football on Wednesday night after work, which, it wasn't so painful for me. It was a pretty positive experience. We'll talk about that on the next episode when we preview the second leg of those matches. But yeah, I'll definitely have to tune in. Want to see more of Vålerenga. Haven't seen enough of them in top Syrian. Trying to keep up with, obviously, our SK Braun. Shout out to the Braun Battalion, of course.
Let's go.
We miss you. We miss you in this tournament, but you've never left us because you're the coolest people in the universe. So, you're still right there with us.
Yeah, and we've never left you.
Exactly, of course. It's ride or die around here. So, yeah, I'm very excited to watch the full match of Vålerenga.
Absolutely. The last thing too is I looked probably a handful of times trying to watch a little bit of St. Polten and Mura.
Yeah,
Mura. This is going to be just a running gag of me not knowing how to pronounce this, but not my fault. And I'll explain to you why. Couldn't even find a stream for that match.
Wow.
Not a single one. All I could find was some people doing their very amateur Eli Manning, Peyton Manning version of St. Polten and Mura.
Shout to them though.
Hell yeah.
We're amateur. we're amateurs. Dino didn't mean any disrespect with that, obviously. We're all amateurs out here doing it. I will say I do, when you're hovering over the YouTube videos, it's okay, which one has the actual game action so I can say something about these matches. So I'm with you on that. I gotta ask, so you got Praha and Galatasaray. They start at noon Eastern. Vålerenga Anderlecht, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Are we double screening in the background while work is going? Like, what are we doing here? What's the setup?
I'm not a big double screener, I'll say.
Yeah, it's hard with football.
I like the game, and then I like the scoreboard. I like the scoreboard watch. So
Ooh, good.
Slavia Praha and Galatasaray, 2-2, obviously. Now they're going back to Praha. Vålerenga Anderlecht doesn't feel the same kind of in the balance. If we get an Anderlecht road goal, and now it's back even, and like, I might have to make a call there. The half an hour difference is pretty key too, because one goes to halftime, you can watch another 14, 15 minutes of the other one. It's all very fluid. It's all about adjustments, in-game adjustments, pre-game adjustments, post-game adjustments. But the last point I was going to make real quick is the great part about watching these teams, and there's a lot of new teams in the field, as you pointed out last week. The fun part about it is like each of these matches features one team that we're going to get to know very, very, very well over these next few months. Point. In the group stage. We're going to know them inside and out, where their strengths and weaknesses are, and just kind of like be able to build those bonds, open up our hearts, as mentioned last week as well.
Totally right, man. I was actually thinking that too. Like when I was like, oh man, I'm so busy with work. Like I don't have the chance to watch all of these matches. Once we get into the group stage, it becomes so much easier to like really dive in, look more at the history of all 16 clubs. 16 teams that we can get acquainted with. We'll have plenty of opportunities for brand new friends. The UEFA Women's Champions League, it's a celebration of life. It's not just a football tournament.
Absolutely.
Let me just say, you've dropped two absolute bangers. I believe you dropped the first ever ipso facto in the history of the pod. And secondly, you just talking about, I want to digest this. I want to circle back on these things. I like the corporate speak making its way in here, plus an ipso facto. You're on top of your game, my good man.
Yeah, I was going to run it by you, run up the flagpole early before the show, but then I was like, we'll table it and circle back to it later next week.
There we go. That's what we got to do. And we'll be ready to circle back to it.
Yeah, synergy. Synergy. Love
Damn
it.
Right.
All right, man. I think we did it. That was part 1 of leg 1 of round 2 of the UEFA Women's Champions League qualifying phase. Let's fucking go. A sincere thank you. Thank you for watching, listening, following, liking, subscribing, just plain hanging out with your boys. Stick around. Part 2 is right around the bend. Remember to like if you liked and subscribe or follow into the channel. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. And a big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Grand Angle, for Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, doesn't matter. My guy brings it. You already know what time it is. I appreciate you, bro.
Likewise, buddy. I mean, I think you're the absolute best women's football podcast host in the world. And ipso facto, everybody should keep on watching. I don't even know if I used that right. But yeah, stay tuned. Check us out. We're going to talk about the other matches in the next episode. We'll see you guys there.